Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. Today, we as Bucks fans received some very sad news as we found out that Donte DiVincenzo, the starting shooting guard of the Milwaukee Bucks, will be out for the rest of the playoffs. This is a huge blow for the Bucks, as DiVincenzo is someone who has been a consistent asset in the starting lineup throughout this entire season, and he brings a lot to this team when it comes to hustle plays and great defense. He also improved his three-point shot this season, shooting a career-high 37.9% from beyond the arc, while also scoring a career-high 10.4 points per game, grabbing a career-high 5.8 rebounds per game, and dishing out a career-high 3.1 assists per game. He also played 27.5 minutes per game in his first year as a full-time starter, and if you didn't guess so, that was his career high. This was obviously a career year for Donte, and this is just a devastating way for that to end. He got off to a bit of a slow start to the playoffs, as in the first two games he combined to score just 8 points while shooting a very poor 2 for 10 from beyond the arc. However, DiVincenzo still made an impact on the game for the Bucks as he played really solid defense, oftentimes on Heat scoring guard Goran Dragic. DiVincenzo also made some huge hustle plays, and his defense and hustle earned him 37 minutes in the tightly contested Game 1 of this series. DiVincenzo played the entire overtime, and while he wasn't super impactful on offense, he did make some key plays defensively that were important in the Bucks coming away with that Game 1 victory. Donte was the Bucks' best option at the shooting guard position, especially in those tight minutes, and he will sorely be missed both for his offense, where he was a solid shooter and could do a little bit more ball handling than the other options the Bucks have at the shooting guard position, and for his defense, where he always made the right play and was constantly hustling his butt off. However, he's going to be out for the rest of the season, so there's no sense in spending too much time crying about that. Instead, let's think about how the Bucks will potentially replace DiVincenzo. I think the most likely starter is Bryn Forbes. Forbes started the second half of Game 3, so that would imply that he is going to be Mike Budenholzer's choice at the shooting guard position moving forward. Forbes had a really nice season for the Bucks this year, averaging 10 points per game while shooting 45% from beyond the arc. He's an absolute knockdown shooter, and he demonstrated that in a monster Game 2 performance against the Heat, in which he dropped 22 points, which was his playoff career high. He also made 6 of his 9 3-point shots in that game, so if you needed further evidence that Bryn can absolutely shoot, there you go. Forbes is also going to be playing more minutes with Giannis Antetokounmpo if he is inserted into the starting lineup, which should be really beneficial for him because he benefits a lot from the extra space that Giannis creates for him with his drives. In addition to that, the Bucks run a good amount of inverted pick and roll when Bryn is out there with Giannis, where Giannis is the ball handler in that, and Bryn sets the screen. In that type of play, Giannis will usually drive to the basket, and Bryn will pop out to the three-point line, and oftentimes that has resulted in a wide-open catch-and-shoot jumper for Forbes, which is a shot that he knocks down probably a little bit more than half of the time. So that's a great look for the Bucks, and it's something that I look for them to look to run a bit more as Forbes plays more minutes alongside Antetokounmpo. The weak spot for Forbes is on the defensive end of the court. He's fought really hard against the Miami Heat so far in this playoff series and hasn't really been a weakness for the Bucks whatsoever. He's even been switched onto Jimmy Butler for some possessions, and he's able to use his strength, despite being a smaller guy, to fend off Butler and prevent him from getting easy shots at the basket. Miami has also failed to get him into mismatches where they can really expose his small size and take advantage of that. However, one team that will expose him is the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets run a ton of screening actions as they try to make your worst defenders switch onto their best offensive players. That was especially evident in Game 2 against the Boston Celtics the other night, as they were consistently trying to get Evan Fournier switched onto one of their big three guys, and whenever that switch did occur, Brooklyn was going right at Fournier. So I think that if Forbes is on the court against Brooklyn, they will look to expose him in a similar way to what they've done to the Celtics' newly acquired shooting guard. That's where Pat Connaughton comes into play. Connaughton would be incredibly important for the Bucks in a series against Brooklyn. I think Forbes would most likely still start the game on the court, but Connaughton would likely play more minutes than his fellow bench mate on the Bucks. Connaughton is a plus help defender, and he's also very switchable and could guard multiple positions, which is very important against the Nets. The Nets could still look to take advantage of Connaughton a little bit, as he doesn't quite have the necessary quickness to keep up with Kyrie Irving, or the necessary length to contest Kevin Durant's jump shots. With that being said, Connaughton could at least hang in there a little bit better than Forbes can, and the hustle plays that he makes in a Donte DiVincenzo-like way could also really help the Bucks on the defensive end against the Brooklyn Nets, where they cannot afford to allow Brooklyn to have any extra possessions considering how lethal that team is in the half-court offense. Connaughton's weakness is that he doesn't have as much on-ball juice as Donte DiVincenzo. DiVincenzo's someone you're a bit more comfortable handling the ball in pick-and-roll actions or driving to the basket, whereas with Connaughton, he's mostly just going to space the floor, knock down three-point shots, and attack closeouts. Connaughton actually is a solid passer off of those attacking closeouts, and he does a solid job of finding guys in the dunker spot for easy layups. Connaughton also can knock down threes at a similar rate to what Donte does, as he is a 37.1% three-point shooter this past regular season. So I think Connaughton and Forbes will likely be the biggest beneficiaries when it comes to minute gain due to this DiVincenzo injury. PJ Tucker will also see an increase in minutes, and I would expect to see the lineup of Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, PJ Tucker, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Brook Lopez more as we continue through the playoffs, especially if the Bucks play against the Philadelphia 76ers, where Tucker's size would really help them out in a matchup where he would likely be asked to guard either Tobias Harris or Ben Simmons for large portions of time. Jeff Teague could also potentially play more. I don't really trust Teague because of the issues he has defensively, as well as his poor decision-making as a passer and shooter, but he's someone who has played in the playoffs before, has that playoff experience, and we could see Coach Mike Budenholzer look to use him sparingly as a backup guard. Overall, I think that losing Donte is a massive blow for the Bucks, and it's really going to hurt them, especially in a potential second-round matchup against the Brooklyn Nets. The way that their role players that are replacing DiVincenzo in Forbes, Connaughton, Tucker, and potentially Teague could play a huge role in how far Milwaukee makes it in this year's playoffs, and I definitely don't have as much confidence as I did in this team prior to this injury. That really sucks because the Bucks were playing some of their best basketball of the season over the past week since the playoffs began, and it's never good to see a team lose a starter in the playoffs. However, I still believe in the Bucks. I still think that this team is going to win Game 4 against Miami. I don't think losing DiVincenzo hurts them all that much in that series, and I still think that they can really give Brooklyn a run for their money. I'm not yet sure who I'll pick to win that series, but I do think it's going to be a tightly fought contest regardless of who comes out the victory. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, especially if you are a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.